San Simeon, California, May 1947. Dawn. An ambulance winds up a mountain road, 5 miles from the coast, higher, higher, through fog that clings to the hillside like memory. At 1,600 feet elevation, gates, iron, ornate. Beyond them, a castle. Not medieval, Spanish Renaissance. White walls catching first light, twin towers piercing fog. 165 rooms spreading across the hilltop. Swimming pools, gardens, terraces, a private kingdom. Inside Casa Grande, the main house, an 84-year-old man lies on a stretcher. William Randolph Hearst, once the most powerful media figure in America, owner of 28 newspapers, builder of this impossible palace. The stretcher is carried down the grand staircase, through halls lined with tapestries bought from European monasteries, past fireplaces shipped stone by stone from Spanish churches, out through doors that cost more than most Americans earned in a lifetime. Hearst's eyes stay closed, or maybe open. Seeing what? The castle he built for 28 years and never finished? The rooms he redesigned dozens of times? The Neptune Pool he rebuilt 3 times because it wasn't perfect? The ambulance drives away, down the mountain, to Los Angeles, to a modest house in Beverly Hills where he'll die 4 years later. He never returns to Hearst Castle. 28 years of building, obsessive, relentless, never-ending building, and in one morning, it ends. But here's the question that haunts San Simeon. Was Hearst building a castle, or was he building a cage? A monument to power that became a prison of obsession? And the darker question, if you spend 3 decades building paradise and leave it unfinished, did you create beauty or just prove that some hungers can never be satisfied? If you're ready for an investigation into one of America's most iconic estates, where ambition became obsession and excess became tragedy, please like, subscribe, and tell me which legendary mansion we should explore next. Let's begin.
San Simeon, California, Central Coast, halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco. Hearst Castle sits at 1,600 feet elevation on a hilltop the Spanish called La Cuesta Encantada, the Enchanted Hill. Visible from Highway 1 below, white against green mountains, commanding, impossible to ignore. The numbers tell the scale. 165 rooms total, including guest houses. 42 bedrooms, 61 bathrooms, 19 sitting rooms, 127 acres of gardens, 2 swimming pools, indoor and outdoor, movie theater, private airfield, the world's largest private zoo during Hearst's lifetime. Construction period 1919 to 1947, 28 years, never completed. Estimated cost $10 million, $200 million today. Annual visitors now, 850,000 plus. But numbers don't capture the madness. The Neptune Pool, outdoor, Roman-inspired, 345,000 gallons, was built 3 times. Hearst approved the design, construction finished. He changed his mind, tore it out, built again, changed his mind again. 3rd time, he was satisfied. Maybe. The castle contains pieces of 30-plus European buildings, entire monasteries purchased, disassembled stone by stone, crated, shipped to Brooklyn warehouses, transported to California, reassembled. One Spanish monastery, Santa Maria de Ovila, was purchased, disassembled, shipped, and never reassembled. The stones sat in crates for decades, eventually donated to San Francisco. The monastery Hearst bought still doesn't exist as a building, just stones, scattered, waiting. Inside Casa Grande, the main house, ceilings from Italian palaces, fireplaces from French chateaux, door frames from Spanish churches, tapestries from medieval castles, Greek vases thousands of years old, paintings by masters, furniture from Versailles. It's not a house. It's a warehouse, a museum, a monument to acquisition. Hearst was called the Great Accumulator. He bought compulsively, obsessively. He'd purchase entire art collections sight unseen. His agents scoured Europe. Buy it, he'd cable, ship it. Whether he had space, whether he needed it, irrelevant. At his death, Hearst owned so much, stored in warehouses across America, that liquidation sales lasted years. Much sold for pennies on the dollar. Some never sold, just disappeared. The castle itself never finished. 28 years of construction. When Hearst left in 1947, rooms remained incomplete. Plans existed for additional wings never built, gardens half-planted, terraces unfinished. Why? The practical answer: money ran out. By the late 1930s, Hearst's debts totaled $126 million. The Depression destroyed his empire. Newspapers sold, radio stations liquidated, art collections auctioned, financial control of his corporation seized by creditors. But there's another answer, one whispered by workers, by guests, by people who knew him. Hearst couldn't stop building because stopping meant facing what he'd built. An empty palace, a monument to excess that couldn't fill the void inside. Orson Welles understood this. In 1941, he made Citizen Kane, a film transparently based on Hearst. The fictional Charles Foster Kane builds Xanadu, a Florida castle filled with the loot of the world. But it's empty. Kane dies alone, whispering Rosebud, a childhood sled. All the treasure, all the power, couldn't replace what he'd lost. Hearst tried to destroy the film, used his media empire to attack it, forbade newspapers from mentioning it, pressured theaters not to show it. Failed. Citizen Kane became and remains one of the greatest films ever made. And Hearst Castle became Xanadu, the symbol of American excess, of wealth that consumes its owner. Today, Hearst Castle is a California state park, a museum. You can tour it. About 750,000 to 850,000 people do annually. Walk the Neptune Pool, see the Roman pool's Venetian glass tiles, stand in Casa Grande and look up at ceilings that crossed an ocean. But you can't escape the feeling. This place is waiting for Hearst, for completion, for purpose. And maybe, if the stories are true, it's still collecting. Not art or antiquities, but something else. The energy of obsession, the ghosts of excess, the echoes of parties that ended when the money ran out. To understand Hearst Castle, you must understand the man who built it. William Randolph Hearst. Born into wealth, inherited more, created an empire, lost it, and left behind this, a castle on a hill that cost everything and satisfied nothing. To understand William Randolph Hearst, start with his father. George Hearst, born 1820, Missouri, poor, restless. In 1850, at age 30, he joined the California gold rush. Thousands came seeking fortune. Most found nothing. George found everything. He had an instinct for geology, could read land, spot potential. He invested in the Comstock Lode, Nevada silver mine, one of the richest in American history. Then the Homestake Mine in South Dakota, largest gold mine in the Western Hemisphere. By the 1860s, George Hearst was wealthy. By the 1880s, spectacularly so. He owned mines, land, newspapers, became a U.S. Senator, died in 1891 worth $18 million, roughly $600 million today. But George wasn't refined. He was rough. A miner, a frontier man. His wife, Phoebe Apperson Hearst, was different. Phoebe came from Missouri gentry, educated, cultured. She married George in 1862. She was 19, he was 41. A strategic match. His money, her refinement. Their only child, William Randolph Hearst, born April 29, 1863. Phoebe doted on him, called him Willie, gave him everything, not just money,
attention, education, exposure to culture. In 1873, when Willie was 10, Phoebe took him to Europe. 18 months touring, London, Paris, Rome. Willie saw cathedrals, palaces, museums, developed a passion for collecting. He'd later recall, "My mother took me to see art. I wanted to own it all." But Willie's California childhood was different. George owned the Piedra Blanca Ranch, 40,000 acres near San Simeon. Remote, beautiful. The family camped there. Hearst later remembered, "My father brought me to San Simeon as a boy. I had to come up the slope hanging on to the tail of a pony. We lived in a cabin on this spot, and I could see forever. That's the West, forever." That spot was Camp Hill, the site of the future Hearst Castle. Even as a child, Willie was drawn to the hilltop, the views, the isolation, the sense of command. From Camp Hill, you could see the Pacific, the mountains, the valley. You were above everything. George built a ranch house on the property, still standing, still private, maintained by the Hearst Corporation. But the hilltop remained undeveloped, sacred, waiting. Willie was educated at elite schools, Harvard briefly, expelled for a prank involving chamber pots delivered to professors. He returned to San Francisco, joined his father's newspaper, the San Francisco Examiner, and discovered his calling, media. Willie, now William Randolph Hearst, wasn't interested in journalism as public service. He was interested in journalism as power, as influence, as tool. He pioneered yellow journalism, sensational headlines, exaggerated stories, manufactured outrage. Readership exploded. Profits soared. Hearst bought more newspapers, expanded to New York, Chicago, across America. By his 30s, Hearst owned a media empire. By his 40s, 28 newspapers, 13 magazines, 8 radio stations, 4 film studios, over 31,000 employees. His media reach was unmatched. He wielded that power ruthlessly, started wars, Spanish-American War 1898, inflamed by Hearst's papers, destroyed enemies, made and broke politicians. One biographer called him the most hated man in the country in 1917. But Hearst didn't just want power, he wanted immortality, legacy, a monument. When Phoebe died in 1919, William Randolph inherited everything. The ranch, now 250,000 acres and 14 miles of coastline, plus $11 million in cash. He was 56 years old, wealthy beyond measure, powerful, feared, empty. Within days of his mother's death, Hearst visited architect Julia Morgan in San Francisco. He had an idea. "I'd like to build something up on the hill at San Simeon. I get tired of going up there and camping in tents. I'm getting a little too old for that. I'd like to get something that would be a little more comfortable." A little more comfortable. That phrase haunts, because what Hearst built was anything but comfortable. It was a palace, a fortress, a museum, an obsession made stone. And it consumed him.
Julia Morgan, born 1872, San Francisco. When Hearst walked into her office in 1919, Morgan was 47 years old, already a legend. First woman to win entry to the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, 1898. First woman licensed as architect in California, 1904. Established her own firm in 1906, unheard of for a woman. By 1919, over 700 buildings to her credit. She was 5 feet tall, soft-spoken, dressed plainly, worked obsessively, 16-hour days routine. Never married, no children. Architecture was her life. Her buildings were solid, engineered for California's seismic activity. Beauty served structure, form followed function, but also beauty mattered, details mattered, craftsmanship mattered. Phoebe Hearst had hired Morgan years earlier, work on the Hearst family's Pleasanton estate, then Wintune, another Hearst property, Morgan earned Phoebe's trust, and through Phoebe, William Randolph's attention. When Hearst arrived in April 1919 with his little more comfortable request, Morgan listened. Then she asked questions. What did he envision? How would it be used? What was the budget? Hearst didn't have firm answers. Something Spanish but refined, elegant, not crude. Morgan understood. She'd studied Spanish colonial revival, had designed in that style for Hearst's Los Angeles Herald-Examiner building, 1915. But Hearst wanted more. Not Mexican colonial, too much ornamentation. Not simple mission style, too crude. He wanted Spanish Renaissance. The architecture of southern Spain, Ronda, Seville, palaces and churches built when Spain ruled empires. Morgan studied, researched, drew plans, presented them. Hearst approved. Construction began. But this wasn't normal construction. This was collaboration, and it lasted 28 years. Morgan traveled to San Simeon nearly every week. From San Francisco, an 8-hour train ride, then 50-mile drive. She'd arrive Friday, work the weekend, return Monday, week after week, year after year. She was meticulous, supervised every detail, stone placement, tile patterns, wood finishes, plumbing, wiring, gardens, fountains, everything. Hearst was involved too, obsessively. He'd review plans, make changes, order redesigns, sometimes after work was completed. The Neptune Pool, built 3 times. First version finished, Hearst didn't like it, tore it out, built again, still not right. Third version finally acceptable. Cost nearly $500,000 for one pool. Morgan never complained, never refused. She'd revise, rebuild, perfect. Their correspondence, preserved at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, runs to 3,700+ letters and telegrams, back and forth, details, decisions, problems, solutions. A draftsman who worked for Morgan recalled seeing them at dinner. The rest of us could have been 100 miles away. They didn't pay any attention to anybody. These two very different people just clicked. What did Morgan earn for 28 years of work? Her fee was 6% commission, later raised to 8.5%. Total fees paid, approximately $70,755. For comparison, the castle cost $10 million to build. Morgan's fees were less than 1% of total costs. Why so little? Multiple factors. Payment delays. Hearst's finances were chaotic. He'd use corporate funds for personal projects. Accounting was informal. Morgan often waited months for payment. Fee reductions. During Hearst's financial troubles in the 1930s, Morgan reduced her fees, sometimes worked for free. She wrote to him, "I wish you would use me in any way that relieves your mind. There never has been, nor will there be, any charge. It is an honor and a pleasure." Devotion. Morgan wasn't in it for money. She had other clients, other projects, but Hearst Castle was her masterpiece, her legacy. Money was secondary. By 1950, Morgan was 78 years old. Hearst had been gone from the castle for 3 years, dead for 1. The project was finished, or as finished as it would ever be. Morgan closed her San Francisco office. 42 years of practice, over 700 buildings ended. She retired, became reclusive, avoided interviews, refused accolades. Ill health confined her. On February 2, 1957, Julia Morgan died, alone, age 85. Her obituaries mentioned Hearst Castle, but briefly. Most focused on other work, Asilomar Conference Grounds, YWCA buildings, private homes. Only later did historians recognize Hearst Castle was one of the 20th century's most significant architectural achievements, and Julia Morgan was the genius who built it.
But here's the uncomfortable truth. Morgan gave Hearst 28 years, and he walked away without finishing. Did that haunt her? Spending 30 years on a masterpiece that remained incomplete? We don't know. Morgan didn't write memoirs, gave few interviews, kept her feelings private. But one fact stands. After Hearst left in 1947, Morgan worked on the castle for 3 more years, alone, finishing what she could, as if the building mattered more than the man who commissioned it, as if she couldn't stop either. Maybe that's the real collaboration. 2 people, utterly different, united by inability to say enough. And the castle, forever unfinished, stands as their monument. To perfection sought but never achieved. To obsession shared. To beauty that consumed its creators.
Building Hearst Castle required an army. Construction began in 1919, continued until 1947, 28 years, with brief pauses during the Depression and World War II. Peak workforce, 150 workers simultaneously. Minimum, 25. Average over 28 years, probably 50 to 75 workers on site at any time. Do the math. Assuming an average of 60 workers for 28 years, working 6-day weeks, 10-hour days, roughly 25+ million man-hours, conservatively. Who were these workers? Italian stonemasons, imported skills, old-world techniques. Local laborers from San Luis Obispo, Paso Robles, surrounding communities. Tile workers, specialists in ceramics, mosaics. Carpenters, master craftsmen for interior woodwork. Iron workers for structural steel, decorative metalwork. Plumbers and electricians, modern systems in a historic setting. Gardeners and landscapers, 127 acres required constant maintenance. The site was remote. San Simeon in 1919 was isolated, no highway, train to San Luis Obispo, then rough roads. Workers either lived on site, temporary housing, dormitory style, commuted, long distances, difficult roads, or stayed weekly, work Monday to Saturday, return home Sunday. Morgan built warehouses at San Simeon Bay, storage for materials, accommodation for workers, a compound, a workers' village. Materials arrived by ship, docked at San Simeon Wharf, then transported by light railway up the hill, or by truck when roads improved. The work was hard, lifting stone, blocks weighing hundreds of pounds moved by hand and pulley. Heights, 3-story buildings, towers, no modern safety equipment. Weather, coastal winds, winter storms, summer heat. Isolation, far from families, entertainment, support. And dangerous. Construction in 1919 to 1947 was deadly by modern standards. No OSHA, minimal safety protocols. Men worked on scaffolding without harnesses, operated equipment without guards, handled materials, stone, steel, chemicals that could maim or kill. How many died? Records don't specify. Worker deaths weren't systematically documented. If a man fell, was crushed, died of injury, it might appear in local newspapers or might not. Conservative estimate based on contemporary construction fatality rates, 10 to 20 deaths over 28 years, possibly more. Their names aren't recorded at the castle. No memorial, no plaque. When you tour Hearst Castle today, no guide mentions them. Wages. Skilled craftsmen earn $5 to $10 per day. Good money for the era. Common laborers earn $2 to $4 per day. Room and board sometimes provided. But consider, Hearst spent $10 million on the castle. If even 10% went to labor, conservative estimate, that's $1 million in wages over 28 years, divided among hundreds of workers. Decent by standards of the time, but not generous given the danger and difficulty. And the work was endless. Hearst constantly redesigned, completed rooms torn out, rebuilt, modified. The Neptune Pool, 3 complete reconstructions. Workers tore out what they'd just built, started over, again. Imagine you spend months building a pool, tile work, plaster, statuary, finishing touches. It's beautiful. Then Hearst visits. I don't like it. Tear it out. You start again. Morgan wrote in a 1927 letter after severe winter storms damaged ongoing work, "We are all leaving the hill. We are drowned, blown, and frozen out. Before we build anything more, let's make what we have practical, comfortable, and beautiful. If we can't do that, we might as well change the names of the houses to Pneumonia House, Diphtheria House, and Influenza Bungalow. The main house we can call the Clinic." She was half joking, but only half. The conditions were brutal. Wind, rain, cold, no modern heating in workers' quarters. Men got sick, some left. Recruiting replacements in remote San Simeon was constant struggle. Yet they built, year after year, stone by stone, a palace for a man they rarely saw, because Hearst wasn't usually there. Early years he visited occasionally, approved plans, gave orders, left. Morgan managed day-to-day. Only in the late 1920s and 1930s did Hearst spend extended time at the castle. By then, much was built. Workers were maintaining, modifying, expanding, but the bulk of heavy construction was complete. The workers who broke their backs building Casa Grande in the early 1920s, who poured concrete foundations, who set the first stones, most never saw Hearst use it. And when he left in 1947, never to return, what did they think? 28 years of labor, a palace rising from nothing, and the man who wanted it abandoned it unfinished. Did the workers feel betrayed, angry, or just unsurprised? Because by 1947, Hearst's financial collapse was public knowledge. The deaths, the liquidations, the fall of power. The castle they'd built was a monument to excess, and excess eventually consumes. The workers scattered. Some stayed in San Simeon, it was home now. Others moved on. The jobs ended, the paychecks stopped. But the castle endured. Not because of Hearst, because of them. The Italian stonemason who knew how to set stone to last centuries. The electrician who wired systems that still function. The tile worker whose mosaics still gleam in the Roman pool. They built something meant to outlast them, and it has. But their names lost to history, while Hearst's name is everywhere. That's the injustice of monuments. The visionary is remembered, the hands that built forgotten. Yet walk through Hearst Castle today, touch the stone, look at the craftsmanship, and remember, invisible hands made this, at risk, at cost, for wages that seem small for the permanence they created. They paid in sweat, risk, and years of their lives. Hearst paid in money, which he eventually lost. Who really built Hearst Castle? Both, and neither. The castle built itself, through accumulated labor transformed into something larger than its parts, a dream made stone that outlasted the dreamer. But dreams, once realized, become burdens, and Hearst was about to learn, you can build paradise, but you can't escape yourself.
Christmas 1925, Hearst Castle. First time the family occupies Casa Grande for the holiday. Present, William Randolph Hearst, age 62. His wife, Millicent Hearst, age 43. Their 5 sons. Staff, guests. It's the last Christmas Millicent spends at the castle. By early 1926, she returns to New York, permanently. The marriage, never dissolved, always technically intact, is effectively over. And into the void steps Marion Davies. Marion Doris, stage name Marion Davies, born 1897, Brooklyn. Beautiful, blonde, funny, quick wit, stammering speech that somehow added to her charm. She met Hearst in 1915. She was 18, he was 52. A showgirl in the Ziegfeld Follies. He was a married media mogul with 5 children. He was captivated, not just by her looks, by her personality. Marion was light where Hearst was heavy, playful where he was brooding, social where he was isolated. By 1918, they were lovers, openly though discreetly. Millicent knew, society knew, but divorce was scandal. Hearst's political ambitions, he'd run for governor, for president, lost both, required marriage's appearance. So Hearst lived double, Millicent in New York, Marion in California, and after 1926, Marion at San Simeon. Hearst made Marion a movie star, founded Cosmopolitan Productions, a film studio existing primarily to produce Marion Davies vehicles, poured millions into her career, promoted her relentlessly in his newspapers. Was she talented? Yes, genuinely. Marion was a gifted comedienne, but Hearst insisted on casting her in dramatic roles, historical epics, tearjerkers that didn't suit her. Her films mostly flopped. Critics dismissed her as Hearst's mistress playing pretend. Unfair, but inevitable. Her association with Hearst overshadowed her ability. At San Simeon, Marion was chatelaine, hostess, the woman who ran the castle. She greeted guests, organized activities, set the tone. Hearst adored her, deferred to her in social matters. The castle was theirs, his money, her personality. But Marion had a problem: alcohol. She drank heavily. Started as social drinking, parties, Hollywood, the roaring 20s, but escalated. By the 1930s, it was dependence. Hearst tried to control it, instituted strict rules at the castle. No liquor in guest rooms. 1 cocktail per person before dinner, served at 7:30 p.m. sharp. Wine with dinner only. No parties extending past midnight. These rules weren't meanness, they were desperation. Hearst watched Marion's drinking spiral and tried, futilely, to limit it. Guests noticed. David Niven, the actor, later wrote about secretly supplying Marion with bootleg alcohol. It seemed fun at the time, but what a disloyal and crummy betrayal of Hearst, and what a nasty potential nail to put in her coffin. Marion would drink in secret, hide bottles, sneak liquor during the day. Hearst knew, couldn't stop it. And maybe San Simeon itself contributed. Because despite the grandeur, the castle was isolating, remote, miles from anywhere. Guests came and went, but Marion stayed, month after month, year after year. She had no career. Films ended when talkies exposed her stammer. No children, no role except Hearst's mistress, trapped in a palace built by obsession. Is it any wonder she drank? There's another shadow over Marion's time at San Simeon: Patricia Van Cleve. Patricia was introduced as Marion Davies' niece. She lived at the castle, was doted on by both Hearst and Marion. In 1937, at age 16, she married actor Arthur Lake at Hearst Castle, the grandest social event there in years. But Patricia wasn't Marion's niece. Just before Patricia's death in 1993, she confirmed what had long been rumored. She was Marion Davies and William Randolph Hearst's daughter. Born 1919 or 1920, hidden, raised as niece to avoid scandal. Hearst was married, Marion was mistress. A child would have destroyed both. So Patricia was secret, loved but hidden, and Marion could never acknowledge her publicly. Imagine living in a castle with your daughter, pretending she's your niece, watching Hearst dote on her, knowing he can never claim her. The secrecy, the lie, the loss of what should have been. Did that contribute to Marion's drinking, to her sadness beneath the humor? We'll never know fully. Marion left few written records, destroyed much before her death. What we know, from 1926 to 1947, 21 years, Marion Davies was the woman of Hearst Castle. She hosted Hollywood's elite: Charlie Chaplin, Cary Grant, Greta Garbo, Clark Gable, Jean Harlow, political figures: Winston Churchill, Calvin Coolidge, aviators: Charles Lindbergh, writers: P.G. Wodehouse, George Bernard Shaw. She made it fun. Hearst provided grandeur, Marion provided life. But when Hearst left in May 1947, carried out on a stretcher, never to return, Marion left too. She stayed with him in Beverly Hills, nursed him, watched him die in August 1951. And Hearst's family, Millicent and the sons, excluded Marion from the funeral. She wrote, "For 32 years I had him, and they leave me with his empty room." Marion inherited nothing from Hearst. Legally, Millicent was wife, but Hearst set up trusts, ensuring Marion's financial security. She was wealthy, but wealth doesn't replace 32 years. Marion lived until September 22, 1961, age 64. Died of stomach cancer. In her final years, she rarely spoke of Hearst or the castle. When asked, she'd deflect, joke, change subject. But friends said she was haunted by the years, by the isolation, by the castle that was prison as much as palace. And maybe by the question, did Hearst love her or did he love having her, the beautiful woman, as another acquisition in his endless collection? The answer, like so much about Hearst Castle, is ambiguous. He built the castle, she made it home. Together they created Xanadu, and when he left, it died. Because a palace without people is just stone, and stone, however beautiful, is always cold.
The 1920s and 1930s, Hearst Castle's golden age. Every weekend, a ritual. Friday evening or Saturday morning, guests board a private train at Glendale Station, north of Los Angeles. The train belongs to Hearst. Luxurious, sleeping cars, dining car, observation car. Or guests fly into Hearst's private airstrip at San Simeon, small planes. Hearst was an early aviation enthusiast. The train arrives at San Luis Obispo, motor cars waiting. 50-mile drive up the coast, through mountains, climbing. Finally, the gates, the hilltop, La Cuesta Encantada, the Enchanted Hill. Casa Grande rising against sky, white limestone, actually stucco. Twin towers, the Neptune Pool glittering below, gardens stretching across terraces. In the distance, the ocean. First-time guests? Awestruck. Cecil Beaton, photographer, wrote of his first visit, New Year's Eve 1931, "We caught sight of a vast, sparkling white castle in Spain. It was out of a fairy story. The flowers were unreal in their ordered profusion." Hearst stood smiling at the top of one of the many flights of garden steps. The weekend schedule: daytime, guests free to do as they pleased. Horse riding, Hearst led mounted parties through the ranch. Swimming, Neptune Pool, outdoor, or Roman Pool, indoor, heated, Venetian glass mosaics. Tennis, multiple courts. Hiking, miles of trails. Zoo visits, Hearst's private zoo, largest in the world. Giraffes, zebras, lions, bears, elephants, exotic animals roaming semi-wild across the hillside. 7:30 p.m. sharp, cocktails in the assembly room. Mandatory attendance. Hearst was punctual. Guests who arrived late faced his disapproval. Alcohol rationing. 1 cocktail per person. No liquor in rooms. Wine with dinner only. The rule was Hearst's attempt to control Marion's drinking, but guests chafed. David Niven and others smuggled bootleg liquor.
9 p.m., dinner in the refectory, dining hall. Long tables, seats assigned, Hearst and Marion at center, guests radiating outward by status or importance. The food was elaborate. Charlie Chaplin recalled, dinners were elaborate. Pheasant, wild duck, partridge, and venison. Wine from Hearst's 7,000-bottle cellar. But also informality. Ketchup bottles on the table. Condiments in jars, paper napkins, except when Millicent Hearst visited, then linen. This juxtaposition, opulence and mundanity, was noted by many guests. After dinner, movies. Always movies. First in outdoor screenings, later in Hearst's private theater, seats 50, state-of-the-art projection and sound. The films usually from Cosmopolitan Productions, Hearst's studio, often starring Marion Davies. Guests watched the same Marion Davies films repeatedly. Sherman Eubanks, whose father worked as electrician at the castle, recalled, Mr. Hearst would push a button and call up to the projectionist and say, "Put on Marion's Peg of My Heart." So I've seen Peg of My Heart about 50 times. Guests grew weary of this. One noted it put a slight strain on the guests' gratitude, but no one complained. You didn't displease Hearst. The guest list was legendary. Hollywood stars, Charlie Chaplin, Cary Grant, Greta Garbo, Clark Gable, Jean Harlow, Mary Pickford, Buster Keaton, Errol Flynn, James Stewart, Joan Crawford. Political figures. Calvin Coolidge, president, visited in 1930. Winston Churchill, visited 1929, multiple times. Charles Lindbergh, aviator hero. Writers and intellectuals, George Bernard Shaw, P.G. Wodehouse, Aldous Huxley. Shaw reportedly said of San Simeon, "This is what God would have built if he had had the money." But beneath the glamour, unease. Hearst was controlling. Guests were watched, expected to follow rules. Dinner attendance, mandatory. Criticism, forbidden. Hearst's newspapers, always stacked everywhere, were to be praised. If Hearst disliked you, you weren't invited back. If you offended him, you might find your career damaged. His media reach was vast. One guest described the experience. It was beautiful, but you felt like you were in a museum. You couldn't relax. And there were accidents. February 1938, a plane crash at San Simeon airstrip. The aircraft carried Lord and Lady Plunkett, British aristocrats, Hearst's guests, and pilot Tex Phillips. All three died. Only passenger who survived, James Lawrence, bobsledding champion. The crash cast shadow over the castle. Hearst was devastated, questioned whether the airstrip was safe, but kept it operational. Were there other deaths, injuries, scandals? Probably, but records are scarce. Hearst controlled media. Bad press about San Simeon would have been suppressed. Whispers persist. Guests who fell in the Neptune Pool, drunk late at night. Affairs and betrayals among Hollywood elite. Marion's drinking episodes, sometimes violent, always hushed up. Hearst's rages when things didn't go as planned. One guest recalled, Hearst was gracious until he wasn't. Then the temperature dropped. You learned to read him and avoid his displeasure. By the late 1930s, the parties slowed. Hearst's financials collapsed. The depression, debts mounting, newspapers sold, art liquidated. Fewer guests, smaller gatherings. The castle's golden age ended. But for one brief, glittering decade, the 1920s into early 30s, Hearst Castle was the place, Hollywood's playground, power's intersection. And then it faded, like all parties, like all excess. What remains are photographs, memories, stories passed down, and the castle itself, empty of guests now, tourists instead, walking where Chaplin walked, swimming where Garbo swam, ghosts of glamour, echoes of laughter. And beneath it all, the sense that the parties were trying to fill something, a void, an emptiness. Because Hearst built a palace, filled it with famous people, served them feasts, showed them movies, and still felt alone. That's the tragedy of Hearst Castle. Not what it lacked, but what it couldn't provide. No amount of beauty, no volume of guests could give Hearst what he wanted: peace, satisfaction, completion. And in 1941, someone noticed it, made a film about it, and Hearst's obsession with destroying that film proved the film's point.
Hollywood, 1939. A 24-year-old boy wonder arrives from New York. Orson Welles, director, actor, radio provocateur who'd terrified America with his 1938 broadcast of War of the Worlds. RKO Pictures gives him unprecedented control, full creative freedom, budget, final cut, unheard of for a newcomer. Welles starts developing Heart of Darkness, Joseph Conrad adaptation, falls through, needs a new project. Enter Herman J. Mankiewicz, screenwriter, drunk, brilliant, and a former guest at San Simeon. Mankiewicz pitches Welles a story. Working title, American. Later, Citizen Kane. The plot? Charles Foster Kane, a media magnate, builds a castle called Xanadu in Florida, fills it with paintings, pictures, statues, the loot of the world. His second wife, Susan Alexander, is a failed opera singer who turns to drink. Kane dies alone, whispering Rosebud, a childhood sled. All the wealth, all the power meant nothing. The inspiration? Thinly veiled. William Randolph Hearst. Kane's newspaper empire? Hearst's. Xanadu? San Simeon. Susan Alexander? Marion Davies. Though the parallels were cruelly exaggerated. Marion wasn't a failed opera singer. She was a genuinely talented comedic actress. But Hearst's insistence on dramatic roles hurt her career. Filming began June 1940. Hearst knew. His gossip columnist friends, Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons, attended early screenings, told him everything. Hearst was furious. He tried to stop the film, offered RKO $800,000, the film's production cost, to destroy the negative. RKO refused. Premiere scheduled May 1st, 1941. Hearst used his media empire as a weapon, forbade all Hearst newspapers from mentioning Citizen Kane. No ads, no reviews, no coverage. Attacked Welles personally, smear campaigns, accusations, insinuations about his politics and personal life. Pressured theaters, threatened to pull advertising from any chain that showed the film. Rallied allies, other media figures, Hollywood insiders, politicians, tried to create consensus. Citizen Kane was dangerous, disrespectful, un-American. The campaign partially worked. Many theaters refused to book Citizen Kane. The film's release was limited. Box office was modest, not a disaster, but not a hit. And Welles' career suffered. He'd been Hollywood's golden boy. After Kane, he was radioactive. Studios didn't want to work with him. Projects fell apart. He spent the next 40 years making films in Europe, never regaining the power he had at 25. Hearst had damaged the film, harmed Welles, won in a sense, but he couldn't kill Citizen Kane. Critics recognized it immediately. A masterpiece, innovative cinematography, non-linear storytelling, deep focus photography, sound design, editing, acting, and the script, Mankiewicz and Welles, a scathing examination of American ambition and emptiness. In 1952, the Sight and Sound Critics Poll voted Citizen Kane the greatest film ever made, and in every subsequent poll, 1962, 1972, 1982, 1992, 2002, 2012, the same result: greatest film ever. Hearst died in 1951, never saw Citizen Kane vindicated, never saw Xanadu become cinema's most iconic symbol of excess and isolation. But the film haunted him. Friends said he never stopped thinking about it, never forgave Welles or Mankiewicz. And maybe the film forced Hearst to see himself clearly, to recognize what San Simeon represented. Because Citizen Kane asks, what does it profit a man to gain the world and lose his soul?
Hearst gained everything: newspapers, wealth, a castle, fame, power, and lost what mattered: his marriage, his health, financial security, and finally the castle itself. In 1947, 6 years after Kane's release, Hearst left San Simeon for the last time, carried out on a stretcher, never returned. Did he think of the film? Of Xanadu? Of Kane dying alone? We don't know. Hearst left no confession, no memoir, no explanation, but the parallels are inescapable. Kane builds Xanadu to fill emptiness, dies whispering rosebud, the sled from his childhood, the symbol of innocent happiness before wealth corrupted him. Hearst builds San Simeon to fill emptiness, dies in Beverly Hills 4 years after leaving. What were his last thoughts? Did he think of Camp Hill, the spot where as a boy he clung to a pony's tail and felt free? The film suggests all the accumulation, all the building, was trying to recover something already lost, and you can't build your way back to innocence. Hearst tried for 28 years, bought 30 monasteries, filled 165 rooms, rebuilt the Neptune Pool 3 times, and still felt empty. Citizen Kane understood this. That's why Hearst hated it, not because it was false, because it was true. On March 9, 2012, 61 years after Hearst's death, Citizen Kane was screened at Hearst Castle for the first time, part of the San Luis Obispo Film Festival. Tourists and film lovers sat in Hearst's private theater, watched the movie he tried to destroy in the house it inspired it. The symmetry is almost too perfect. The castle outlasted the man, the film outlasted the hate, and both, film and castle, stand as monuments to the same truth. Beauty built to fill emptiness just reveals the emptiness more clearly. That's the curse of Citizen Kane, not that it damaged Hearst, but that it told the truth he couldn't face. And the castle, still standing, still waiting, proves the film right. Because San Simeon, like Xanadu, is a beautiful prison, a monument to obsession, a palace where a man tried to buy happiness and found only more rooms to fill. Wells knew, Mankiewicz knew, and somewhere deep inside, Hearst knew too. That's why he couldn't stop building, because stopping meant admitting, this isn't working, this will never work, all this beauty and I'm still empty. So he kept building, until money ran out, until health failed, until he had no choice but to leave. And the castle, incomplete, stands as his answer, or his question. If you build paradise and it doesn't make you happy, then what? October 1929. The stock market crashes. The Roaring Twenties end. The Great Depression begins. Hearst, at first, seems immune. His empire is vast. Newspapers, magazines, radio, film studios, real estate. But cracks appear, quickly. The problems. Over-leveraged. Hearst borrowed heavily to fund expansion. His companies carried massive debt. Revenue collapsed. Depression killed advertising. Newspapers and magazines depend on ads. Ad spending evaporated. Circulation dropped. Unemployed people don't buy newspapers. Subscriptions plummeted. Expensive lifestyle. Hearst's personal spending, San Simeon, art collecting, Marion's film career, burned millions annually, even in depression. Chaotic accounting. Hearst used corporate funds for personal purchases. Mixed business and personal finances made clear accounting impossible. By 1937, Hearst's financial position was catastrophic. Debts, $126 million, roughly $2.7 billion today. His lawyers forced a reckoning. Hearst was compelled to cede financial control of his empire to a conservation committee, creditors and financial managers. The consequences. Newspapers sold. Hearst once owned 28. By 1940, down to 17. Some were merged, others shuttered. Radio stations liquidated, real estate sold, properties across America, including prime holdings in New York and California. Art collections dispersed, the most painful. Hearst had spent decades accumulating, now forced sales, often at fractions of purchase price. The sales were massive. Gable's department store in New York held a sale of Hearst's art in 1941. Furniture, tapestries, sculpture, paintings, advertised as the William Randolph Hearst Collection, bargain basement prices. Hearst was heartbroken. He railed in letters. They greatly cheapened them and us. They advertised like a bargain basement sale. I am heartbroken. But he had no choice. The debts had to be paid. Construction at San Simeon virtually ceased in the late 1930s. Projects abandoned mid-completion. Plans shelved. Hearst's life contracted. Fewer guests, smaller parties. The grandeur dimmed. Then, December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor. America entered World War II. Hearst and Marion closed San Simeon, too close to the coast, vulnerable to Japanese attack, theoretical but feared. They moved to Neptune, another Hearst property, Northern California, inland, safer. The castle sat empty through the war, shuttered, staff reduced to skeleton crew, gardens went untended, pools drained, dust accumulated. In 1945, war ended. Hearst and Marion returned to San Simeon. Construction resumed on limited scale. Morgan still involved, still revising, still perfecting, but it was shadow of former activity. Money was tight. Hearst's health declining. By early 1947, Hearst was 84 years old. Heart problems, mobility issues, needed constant medical attention. San Simeon, remote, hours from hospitals, was impractical. Marion urged him, move to Los Angeles, better medical care, closer to doctors. Hearst resisted. San Simeon was his creation, his palace. Leaving meant defeat. But his body wouldn't cooperate. May 2, 1947, Hearst suffered a serious health crisis. Doctors insisted he must leave immediately. An ambulance was called. Hearst was placed on a stretcher, carried down the grand staircase he'd walked up thousands of times, out through Casa Grande's doors, past the Neptune Pool, down the hill. He was conscious, eyes open, seeing it all, for the last time. The drive to Los Angeles, 5 hours, then to 1007 North Beverly Drive, Marion's house in Beverly Hills, modest by San Simeon standards, but comfortable and, crucially, near medical care. Hearst lived there, bedridden, declining, for 4 more years. He never returned to San Simeon, never saw it again. On August 14, 1951, William Randolph Hearst died, age 88. Cause? Cardiovascular disease, the official story. The unofficial? Heartbreak. The loss of his empire, his castle, his power, everything he'd built. Marion was with him, had nursed him for 4 years, but when he died, Hearst's family, wife Millicent and the 5 sons, excluded Marion from the funeral. She wasn't allowed to attend, wasn't acknowledged. 32 years together, erased. Marion was devastated. Later wrote, "For 32 years I had him, and they leave me with his empty room." But Marion was financially secure. Hearst had set up trusts. She inherited wealth, property, security. What she didn't inherit was the castle. That went to the Hearst family. And the family didn't want it. San Simeon was expensive. Maintenance alone cost hundreds of thousands annually. Taxes, insurance, staff, utilities, upkeep on 165 rooms, 127 acres of gardens, 2 pools, a zoo. The family couldn't afford it, didn't want it. In 1957, 6 years after Hearst's death, they approached the state of California with an offer. Take the castle, free, along with its contents, furniture, art, everything Hearst hadn't sold. The The state hesitated. Accepting meant assuming costs, operating a museum, staffing, maintenance, repairs. But the historical and cultural value was undeniable. Hearst Castle was California's Versailles, architectural masterpiece, American treasure. On May 27, 1958, the transfer was finalized. Hearst Castle became a California state park. A dedicatory plaque was installed. La Cuesta Encantada, presented to the state of California in 1958 by the Hearst Corporation in memory of William Randolph Hearst, who created this Enchanted Hill, and of his mother, Phoebe Apperson Hearst, who inspired it. The castle opened to public tours June 2, 1958. First day, hundreds of visitors, curious, awed, walking through rooms that had hosted Chaplin and Churchill, swimming in the Neptune Pool where Greta Garbo swam, standing in Casa Grande where Hearst dreamed his dreams. Today, 750,000 to 850,000 visitors tour annually. Hearst Castle is one of California's top tourist attractions. The irony, Hearst spent 28 years building it privately, obsessively guarding access. No movie filming, he ordered. Keep it exclusive. Now, open to all. Tickets $25 to $36. Anyone can see it. The palace meant for the elite is public museum. The obsession to build, to own, to control, defeated by economics and death. Hearst tried to create permanence and succeeded. The castle endures, but not as he wanted, as his, as monument to him. Instead, it's monument to what happens when obsession meets reality, when the money runs out, when health fails, when time wins. Hearst built trying to cheat time, to create immortality. He got immortality, but not the kind he wanted. He's remembered, but as Citizen Kane, as the model for American excess, as the man who built too much and lost it all. The castle stands, beautiful, empty, waiting. Waiting for what? For Hearst? He's not coming back. For meaning, for purpose, or just waiting, the way abandoned things wait, patient, eternal. Stone doesn't care who built it or why. It just endures. And maybe that's the final lesson of Hearst Castle. You can build monuments, but monuments don't need you. They outlast you. And in outlasting, they reveal the truth. You were temporary. The stone is not.
May 2nd, 1947. Morning. William Randolph Hearst wakes in Casa Grande. His bedroom, overlooking the Pacific, the mountains, the empire he built. He's 84, frail, heart failing. Doctors have urged, leave immediately. San Simeon is too remote. If emergency strikes, help is hours away. Marion agrees, they must go. Hearst resists, weakly. This is his castle, his creation. Leaving means admitting it's over. But his body decides. He can't walk, can barely sit up. The ambulance is already on its way. Staff prepares. A stretcher, blankets. Marion oversees, calm externally, shattered inside. The ambulance arrives. Attendants enter Casa Grande. The house Hearst built to impress the world now watches him leave, defeated by time. He's placed on the stretcher, carried, down the grand staircase, marble from Italy, balustrades carved by craftsmen who crossed an ocean, through the assembly room, where cocktails were served at 7:30 sharp, where Hollywood's elite gathered, past the refectory, where Chaplin and Churchill dined, out the front doors, bronze from Florence, into sunlight, the last time Hearst sees the exterior, the twin towers, the white walls, the castle that consumed 28 years. The stretcher is loaded. Ambulance doors close. Marion climbs in, won't leave his side. The vehicle descends 5 miles of winding road, past the Neptune Pool, rebuilt 3 times,
past the zoo being dismantled, animals relocated, past the gardens, 127 acres, overgrown now, no staff to maintain them, through the gates, down the mountain, away. Hearst is silent, or maybe speaks. We don't know. No one recorded his last words at the castle. But what would he say? Goodbye? Too simple, too final. I'll return? He knows better. This is it. It's not finished? 28 years and still incomplete. That failure haunts. Or maybe nothing, maybe silence, the weight of leaving too heavy for words. The drive to Beverly Hills, 5 hours. Long, uncomfortable. Marion holds his hand. They arrive at 1007 North Beverly Drive, Marion's house. Modest, Spanish colonial style. 1 story, maybe 3,000 square feet. After 165 rooms, it feels like a cottage. But it's comfortable, close to Cedars of Lebanon Hospital, doctors available. This is where Hearst will live his final years. He's carried inside, placed in a bedroom, medical equipment installed, nurses hired. Marion becomes caretaker. She manages his care, reads to him, sits with him, hours every day. Hearst's family visits. Millicent, the wife he left but never divorced, comes occasionally. The sons visit, but it's Marion who's constant. Hearst's world contracts, from castle to house, from empire to bedroom, from power to dependence. He sleeps more, weakens, the heart gives out slowly, painfully. Does he think of San Simeon? Of course, how could he not? Friends who visit say he talks about it, plans to return, when I'm stronger, next month, soon. But everyone knows he's not getting stronger, he'll never go back. 4 years pass. 1948, Hearst's 85th birthday, celebrated quietly. No party, no guests, just Marion and close family. 1949, condition worsens, more time in bed. Doctors adjust medications, manage pain. 1950, Hearst is bedridden, confused sometimes, memory fading, but still lucid often enough to know this is the end. August 1951, Hearst is dying. The family gathers. Millicent comes. The sons. Marion stays. August 14th, 1951, 9:50 a.m., William Randolph Hearst dies. Marion is there, holding his hand. Then, almost immediately, Hearst's family removes Marion from the house. She's not family, not legally. The will specified everything to Millicent and the sons. Marion gets trusts Hearst set up years earlier, but nothing from the estate directly. And she's not welcome at the funeral. The Hearst family, bitter toward Marion for decades, blaming her for the marriage's failure, excludes her. The funeral is held. Millicent attends. The sons, society figures, media moguls. Marion is not there. She's in Beverly Hills, alone, with Hearst's empty room. She writes in her diary, "For 32 years I had him, and they leave me with his empty room." Marion lives 10 more years, remarries, briefly, disastrously, drinks more heavily, health declines. She dies September 22, 1961, age 64, stomach cancer. In her final years, she rarely spoke of Hearst or the castle. Friends said she was haunted by the years, by the isolation, by the loss, and maybe by the question, was it worth it? 32 years as mistress, living in a castle, hosting Hollywood, drinking to cope with isolation, watching Hearst build obsessively, never finishing, always wanting more. Then exile, exclusion, erased from his official life. Was it worth it? We'll never know Marion's answer. She left no memoir, destroyed most personal papers. But the castle remains, and in remaining, it answers. No, it wasn't worth it. Because the castle, beautiful, historic, significant, is also empty. empty of the people who made it live, empty of the parties, empty of the obsession that built it. It's a museum now. Tourists walk through, admire, photograph, leave. No one lives there. No one can. It's too big, too expensive, too much. Hearst built it to be home. It became cage, then monument, now attraction. And the question that haunts every visitor, why did he build this? The official answer, to house his family, to display his collections, to host guests, to create beauty. But the real answer, the one Citizen Kane understood, is simpler and sadder. He built to fill emptiness, and building just revealed the emptiness more clearly. Every room he added proved insufficient. Every ceiling imported from Italy couldn't satisfy. Every monastery purchased and disassembled and shipped across the ocean just exposed the void. Because the void wasn't outside, it was inside, and you can't build your way out of internal emptiness. Hearst tried for 28 years, spent $10 million, employed hundreds, created architectural masterpiece, and left in an ambulance, never to return. That's the tragedy of Hearst Castle. Not that it's beautiful, that's obvious. Not that it's historic, that's documented, but that it failed. Failed to make Hearst happy, failed to fill the void, failed to be what he needed. And in failing, it succeeded at something else, showing the truth that wealth can't buy satisfaction, that obsession disguised as ambition is still obsession, that building monuments to yourself just proves you need them. Hearst Castle is beautiful, and it's a warning. Be careful what you build. It might outlast you, and in outlasting, reveal what you tried to hide.
San Simeon, California today. Hearst Castle sits on its hilltop, white against green. Twin towers reaching sky, Neptune Pool glittering. 750,000 visitors walk through annually, tour the rooms, just photograph the pools. Stand where Chaplin stood, where Churchill smoked cigars, where Hearst dreamed dreams that consumed him. The castle is maintained, restored, protected. A California state park, National Historic Landmark. It will outlast all of us. But the question remains, what is it? A monument to ambition? Yes. A warning about obsession? Also yes. A beautiful prison? Perhaps. An empty palace? Definitely. Or maybe it's simpler. Hearst Castle is a mirror. It reflects what we bring to it. Art lovers see masterpiece. Historians see Gilded Age excess. Psychologists see compulsive behavior. Tourists see Instagram backdrop. Everyone sees something different, because the castle, like all great monuments, is ambiguous. It doesn't tell you what to think. It asks you to decide. Was Hearst a visionary or an obsessive? Was this creation or compulsion? Is Hearst Castle beautiful or just big? Does wealth create beauty or does it just buy bigger cages? There are no wrong answers, just interpretations. But here's mine. Hearst Castle is the most honest monument America ever built, because it doesn't lie, doesn't pretend, doesn't hide. It shows exactly what happens when obsession meets unlimited resources, when ambition has no governor, when more becomes the only goal. It shows the beauty that can be created and the emptiness that beauty can't fill. It shows a man trying to build immortality and discovering that immortality without meaning is just stone. That's why Hearst Castle matters, not because it's pretty. Pretty things exist everywhere, but because it's true, painfully, beautifully true. And truth, even uncomfortable truth, is worth preserving. If you've stayed for this hour-long investigation, thank you. Like this video if it made you think, question, feel.
Subscribe if you want more deep investigations into America's legendary estates, where dreams meet reality and monuments reveal their creators. Tell me in the comments, have you visited Hearst Castle? What did you feel? Was Hearst a builder or a hoarder? Which legendary American estate should we investigate next? Your engagement drives these investigations. Your thoughts shape the conversation. And one final reflection. William Randolph Hearst spent 28 years building a castle, never finished it, left in an ambulance, died 4 years later, never returned. But the castle endures. That's the paradox of monuments. They outlast their creators, and in outlasting, they testify, not to what the creator wanted, but to what they were. Hearst wanted to be remembered as powerful, cultured, important. We remember him as obsessed, excessive, empty. The castle tells the truth he couldn't face. All the building in the world can't fill the void inside. But maybe that's okay, because in failing to satisfy Hearst, the castle succeeds at something else, teaching us. Teaching that more isn't always better, that bigger doesn't mean fulfilled, that monuments to ourselves just reveal what we're trying to hide. Hearst Castle is beautiful, and it's a warning. Listen to it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for thinking. I'll see you in the next investigation.